In 2021, the Blanchard River Demonstration Farms partnered with the Water Resources Monitoring Group from Wisconsin to be a part of a conservation innovation grant focused on soil health practices. The demonstration farms are working with the George family from the Findlay area and will test the conservation practice of subsurface nutrient placement for the next 5 years for its impact on water quality and farmer profitability.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We continue our series with the project for the Blanchard River Demonstration Farms. We're visiting today with Ryan George of the George Farm and Aaron Heilers, and Aaron's going to be our second guest. So let's start off with Ryan. First of all, where is the farm that's the project that we're talking about?
Thanks for having us today, Dale. The farm we're talking about specifically is right east of Findlay, right off of 224 in Hancock County, specifically right on the east edge of Marion Township.
So tell us a bit about why'd you decide to sign up for the H2 Ohio program?
We felt that with the continued pressure that is on agriculture to do something to help with water quality in the lake and our proximity to a watershed right here, this particular farm has a ditch running right through it as well that feeds directly into the Blanchard River. We felt that it was a good opportunity for us to experiment with some management practices, hopefully not suffering any kind of deficit or seeing any decreased production, but using that H2 Ohio program to kind of push us along and have some money to experiment with some different practices.
So some of the project that you were involved in was the subsurface nutrient placement. First, describe to us what's the goal and give us a picture. What does subsurface look like?
So conventionally on our operation, we had been taking a fertilizer spreader, a floater truck, and using that to apply all of our phosphorus and potassium. Usually in the fall, once we got the crop off, we would grid soil sample and then go out and make recommendations and apply that for the following year's crop. What we're doing on this particular farm, and we did it on a lot of our other acres this fall as well, was we bought an air seeder. My brother and I did this past spring. We converted it over to hydraulic drive. So we have the variable rate technology on it, and we're able to place those nutrients, specifically the phosphorus, 2 inches deep in that soil. So the end goal is to try and eliminate or reduce any kind of surface runoff that we might get over the winter time with a normally broadcast application.
Do you plan to change any of the farm's overall management systems, less tillage, more cover crops, so on? How do you see this experience starting to influence how you farm?
The biggest factor for us was the efficiency. And if I was spreading broadcast fertilizer, I could spread a lot of acres in one day. And that led us to be able to do a lot of fall tillage and things like that. But one advantage we can see is that we are able to get across quite a few acres with our air seeder. We affectionately call it the Lake Saver 3000. We are able to keep up quite well when we do have labor. And it's something that I think is going to lean us towards a little bit more no-till or minimum till across a lot of our other acres as well. Hopefully being more efficient in the spring, not having to wait on that tillage pass. If we can continue and see data that backs up the fact that it's effective, it's efficient, and if we can reduce our overall fertility needs by maybe 10%, 15% by placing that fertilizer well, it could be a very good thing.
And obviously the only thing you're really giving up in this scenario might be some time, some expense and equipment, and maybe learning a little bit more of a little different style at times, given Mother Nature and her conditions. Other than that, are there any drawbacks?
The labor part of it's going to be big. If I can go out and spread 500 acres in an afternoon with my spreader truck versus 80 to 90 acres a day with the fertilizer rig, that's going to be big. If we can just keep a guy in the seat, it typically works pretty well. But sometimes in the fall, several of us on our operation are involved in some other off-farm type jobs. It does make labor a premium sometimes in the fall.
Let's talk a little bit about the idea then of the conservation innovation grants. How do they fit into the demonstration farms?
So we were approached about a year and a half ago, kind of right before the COVID situation happened, from the Water Resources Monitoring Group. This is a group that is out of Wisconsin that we've worked with in the past on implementing some lower cost alternative edge of field monitoring on a couple of the demonstration farms, and they approached us about our interest in a soil health conservation innovation grant. So we accepted, and they got accepted ultimately at the national level. And so our group is one of 6 across the Midwest that is experimenting with a variety of different soil health practices.
Why did you choose it, or is this something that was recommended for you to take a look at?
When we sat down and looked out, at the data from water quality monitoring, we didn't see a lot of data on strictly no-till. I know that's something that a lot of us farmers say we're no-till, but we're actually rotational, or that kind of rotational tillage. No-till your beans, do some sort of tillage before corn, but there wasn't anything for a long-term no-till site, and it's a struggle to find one. And so when we ran across the George family and that particular site, that was really a good find for us, because it was hard to find that true no-till site. And so we, looking at H2 Ohio practices, they're incentivizing subsurface placement. We know from water quality data that placement is a pretty good practice to reduce dissolved phosphorus loading. And so we wanted to try to put the two together and see if we could get some good results from this type of project.
Explain a little bit of the research project as you tried to set it up, rates of nutrient application versus original farm applications, what you're trying to accomplish, and have we seen results yet?
So this fall was the first time that they actually implemented the subsurface placement. So no results yet. The way the trial is set up, it's we'll call it field scale. There's 12 replicated plots across the field that are doing basically 3 different trials. So we've got the subsurface placement at the full recommended rate, tri-state rate. The next block is broadcast at the full recommended rate again. And then the final trial is subsurface placement at a 25% reduction in rate. And so the thought process there is, strip tillers tell us that the big selling point for them is that efficiency of the nutrients. So, you're placing it right there. They can cut their fertilizer bill pretty substantially. Can we accomplish that same thing with this type of placement? So we're experimenting, seeing if it's gonna, over 5 years or maybe longer, can we see that same sort of reduction, so that it ends up paying off for the farmer, even though it might be a little less efficient than broadcasting. You're saving some nutrients, saving some dollars being put out there. And ultimately, if that's the case, then, less fertilizer out on the landscape is, a little less risk of that fertilizer leaving.
Plus, less expense, there's a better chance for a profitable future. And not every year looks like the corn and bean market that we recently have developed. So you've got to try to figure out how to make all that work together.
Yep.
The application, are you using a disc holder to get your 2 inches? Are you pulling a chisel type device? What exactly is getting it into the ground?
So Dale, what we have is it's a Case brand air seeder, just like you see a lot of people used to plant beans and wheat with them. It has a large disc, like a 20-inch diameter disc with a boot right behind it. Very minimal disturbance. We were able to run it in a lot of different ground conditions this fall, through bean stubble, no problem, corn stalks, without any issues. And it did a very nice job of placing that fertilizer in the ground. And we actually went one step further with it too. We were able to variable rate some phosphorus application and try and plant some rye as a cover crop with it at the exact same time. So sometimes when you put fertilizer and seed in the same trench, you get a little germination issues, but we did that as an experiment on one field to see if we can also plant some cover crop at the same time.
What did field disturbance look like after the application?
You would think we were drilling wheat in the fall when we were out there. The neighbors probably thought we planted a whole pile of wheat, which we haven't done in a lot of years, but maybe they think we're not very good farmers right now because there's no wheat growing right now either. So it's very minimal disturbance, just like you would see no-tilling beans or something in the spring with a drill.
Looks like we'll have quite a variety to take a look at. Aaron, how does this project tie into the H2 Ohio?
So we really want to emphasize that we're not trying to compete with H2 Ohio. We would like to be a partner, a helping hand. Not everybody signed up for H2 Ohio for a variety of reasons, and specifically on the subsurface placement, they may have shied away when budget restraints came in, and you weren't sure if money was going to be there, didn't want to put the expense out for a piece of equipment. So what we're trying to do is be a partner, get some more eyeballs on subsurface placement, more data on placement, and that way if a farmer does want to take that leap, they have a little more confidence to do so.
Explain the secondary portion of the project, working with farmers implementing these practices on neighbors' fields.
Yeah, so kind of going along with what I just said there, the idea with this practice in the CIG as a whole is incentivizing farmer to farmer contact on these practices. So working with the Georges, and we'd also like to wrap in a couple other farmers, maybe 3 to 4 additional farmers that are doing some sort of placement like this, and have them almost give them a finder's fee. So they go out and work with, maybe one neighbor that is interested in doing this practice. They would get an incentive payment to find that farmer and to implement this practice maybe on their farm. And then that farmer who was the receiver of the practice would also get a small incentive payment as well, so that they're covered on their expenses too. So trying to engage that farmer to farmer relationship, which we all know is the best way farmers learn. They're looking at their neighbors, they're seeing what they're doing, and if it works, then they're more apt to try it.
If you are interested in working with the Blanchard River Demonstration Farms on subsurface placement, please contact Aaron Heilers at BlanchardDemoFarms@gmail.com and visit their website for more information about conservation practices in Ohio.